Okay, now let's start with the next programming in web laboratory, that is lab program 3. This program is consists of HTML, JavaScript along with the cascading style sheets. Here, before moving to the actual code, now let us understand the question first. Write a JavaScript code that displays text growing with increasing font size in the interval of 100 milliseconds in red color. When the font size reaches 50 point, it displays text shrinking in blue color. Then the font size decreases to 5 point. Try to understand the code. Here the task is simple. The thing is, we need to write the Java code. The first thing is for to display the text. The text is of text growing with the increasing font size in the interval of 100 milliseconds, and whatever the text is increasing its size, it should be in red color. When it reaches to the 50 point, again it should start shrinking its size up, to the font size becomes 5, and it should be in blue color. In the question itself, they specified the text growing as well as the text shrinking, and the color of the text as well as the size of the text. Here, this is the code snippet for whatever the question we discuss now. Just look at the code later. I will explain in detail. The next thing, here, this is about the code. Now let us discuss one by one. Let's start with the HTML declaration. We already know that every HTML5 declaration, every HTML5 document, it consisting of this declaration, that is Doctype Html, which represents the document type and helps the browsers to display web pages correctly. It must only appear once at the top of the page before any HTML tags, and it is also case sensitive. Here, instead of writing document type definitions or DTD, simply we are writing it as a doc type. Next is the HTML tag. We know that it is the root element and it defines the whole HTML document. Next is head element, which contains the descriptive elements about the document such as title, but anyway we are not using title here. And one more thing, it is not mandatory also. Next is a style tag. In order to specify the style information for a document, we can make use of this style tag, and it is a block tag, that is we are supposed to open as well as close the style tag. Here the style information are represented in terms of style sheets, that is cascading style sheets. They are used to format the layout of a web page. This cascading style sheets can be added to the HTML documents in 3 different ways, that is inline, internal as well as the external. Inline means by using the style attribute inside the HTML elements, we can specify the styles. Internal means that is an embedded style sheet. By using a style element in the head section, we can make use of this internal style sheets. Anyway, we are using internal style sheets in this program. And lastly, the external. The name itself tells that separately we created one file with the extension .css. Later on, we call that files in our HTML document. This is about the style sheet. Next is, in order to specify the style sheets, we are supposed to use the selectors. The selectors are used to find or select the HTML elements you want to style. Here, in order to select the elements, we already know that cascading style sheets means what? In order to apply some properties or the styles for the HTML elements, we can use this selectors. The selectors can be of different types. It can be simple, combinator, pseudo class, pseudo elements, attribute, etc. Here we are using the element selector. Element selector means the name itself tells that here whatever the properties which we are specifying, those properties will be applied to the respective element. Just look at the syntax here. Here selector property value. This is what the syntax we are using to specify the different selectors. This selector here, it is replaced with the selector here, it is replaced with the element selector, that is the element name followed by the list of properties. Here the list of properties means each individual cascading style sheet declaration must contain a property. The property can be text, color, background, border, spacing, sizing, etc. Here we are using some properties called position, then top, left, transform, like 4 properties we used. Let us know one by one in detail. Here, the position property means which specifies the type of the positioning method used for an element. It can be 5 different values, that is static, relative, fixed, absolute, as well as the sticky. But here we used it as absolute. An element with the position absolute is position relative to the nearest position ancestor, that is instead of positioned relative to the viewport like fixed. However, if an absolute positioned element has no position ancestors, it uses the document body and moves along with the page scrolling. Next property is that top property. The top property affects the vertical position of a positioned element. And one more thing, this property has no effect on non-positioned elements. Try to understand. If the element is not positioned, means there is no use of using this property. If the position is absolute, means the top property sets the top edge of an element to a unit above or below the top edge of its nearest positioned ancestor. Next, coming to the next property, there is a left property. The left property affects the horizontal position of an positioned element. This property also no effect on non-positioned elements. That is, if you are not specified the element position, then no need to use, there is no use of using this left property. If the position is absolute, the left property sets the left edge of an element to a unit to the left of the left edge of its nearest position ancestor. Next, the last property is transform property. This property applies a 2D or 3D transformation to an element. This property allows you to rotate, scale, move, skew the 4 elements which we are used. Here the syntax is that transform colon followed by the function name. Here I am using the function name, it is translate. Here this function takes 2 parameters x and y. It is replaced with the 2 values 50% as well as the 50%. This indicates that defines a 2D translation. This is about the properties which we are going to apply for the respective tag P. Next, coming to the body section. In the body section, we specified one tag called as the P. Here it with the attribute ID equals demo. Here first let me tell you what is the use of this P tag. This P tag defines a paragraph. The P tag defines the paragraph. In order to specify the paragraphs, we can make use of this tag here. But remember one thing, here I am not specified any content inside this paragraph tag. Why means in order to specify that content, we can make use of one more property in HTML, that is inner HTML property. By using that, we can set the content of an element. But the thing is that here we use one attribute called as the ID. ID equals some value demo. Okay, this value has been used later in the program. That is, the ID attribute specifies a unique ID for an HTML element. Along with that, which is used to style a style sheet, and also by JavaScript to manipulate the element with specific ID. But in our example, simply we are used to manipulate the element with a specific ID. Next is the script tag. Here, the script tag means in order to specify the JavaScript inside the HTML code, we are going to make use of this script tag. But the JavaScript can be specified in 3 different ways, that is inline, embedded, as well as the external JavaScript. Here, inline means inline JavaScript refers to the practice of including JavaScript code directly within certain HTML attributes. Embedded means this refers to the practice of placing JavaScript code within a script element. This is what we are using in our lab program, that is embedded JavaScript. External JavaScript means it is creating one external file with the extension .js, and we are calling that file through using some elements. The script element either contains the scripting statements or it points to an external script file through the source attribute. What are the common uses for this JavaScript means are image manipulation, form validation, and dynamic changes of the content. Next, coming to the next thing, here we declared 3 variables by making use of the keyword var, and it should be the lowercase letter. Remember, before using any variables, we are supposed to declare the variables. In JavaScript also, we are declaring the variables by using the keyword. As I said in the earlier, before making use of any variables in JavaScript, the variable should be declared. Here, the declaration of the variables are done by using the keyword var followed by the variable name. Along with that, we can also assign the values for the variables by using assignment operator equals. Depending on the RHS value, we can say that which type of variable it is. For example, if I specify some numerical value, then I can say that it is of type integer. Likewise, depending on the RHS, we can identify the different types of variables. Here we declare three variables, var1, fs, as well as the IDs. Anyone will discuss one by one. Next is var1 is equal to set interval of in time comma 1000. Here, before moving to that set interval, let me tell you one thing. The window objects allows execution of code at specific time intervals. These time intervals are called as the timing events. There are two key methods to use with the JavaScript are set interval as well as the clear interval. These two are the timing events. Okay. Set interval means which executes a function after waiting a specified number of milliseconds but repeats the execution of the function continuously. This function can be used as for loop. Okay, here the set interval methods calls a function and evaluates an expression at specified intervals, that is in milliseconds. First, let us understand the syntax of the set interval. Set interval followed by the parenthesis. Inside that parenthesis, we can specify the parameters. The first parameter is the function name, followed by the milliseconds, followed by the n number of parameters. But in our example, we are concentrating only two things. One is the function name as well as the milliseconds. Here, the function is required as well as that will be executed. Next, coming to the milliseconds. Here, the milliseconds is also required. The intervals, that is in terms of milliseconds, on how often to execute the code. If it is less than 10, we can directly take the value it is 10 is used. The set interval method will continue calling the function until the clear interval function is called or the window is closed. Along with that, the ID value written by the set interval is used as the parameter for the clear interval. Try to understand whatever the variable I'm using here, var1, this will be again used in the clear interval in order to decrement the time or in order to erase the time. Next is the second variable, that is variable fs is equal to 5. In the question itself, they specified that the font size of the text should be initially 5. So I'm directly initializing fs is equal to 5. The next thing is var IDs is equal to document dot get element by ID of demo. Try to understand this. Here we already know that what do you mean by that get element by ID. By using that specific ID attribute, we can fetch that value. But this demo is already defined in the paragraph tag p ID is equal to demo. So that we can fetch that value demo by using that ID attribute. The get element by ID method returns the element that has the ID attribute with a specified value. This method is one of the most common methods in the HTML DOM and is used almost every time you want to manipulate or get some information, an element on your document, etc. It returns null with if the no elements with a specified ID exist. An ID should be unique within a page. However, if more than one element with the specified ID exists, the get element by ID method returns the element in the source code. Try to understand. We are not specified any content for the paragraph tag, but it is represented by using the ID is equal to demo. Whatever the thing which we are taking, it will be assigned to the variable IDs. Next is calling the function timer, the function in timer. Here in the function in timer, in order to write the functions in JavaScript, we are following the syntax called as the function keyword, followed by the function name, followed by the parenthesis. Whatever the code which we want to execute in the function, those should be specified within the two curly braces. In our program function, the function name is in timer. We are not sending any parameters here. Simply we are writing the that is empty braces. Next, coming to the first line, IDS.inner HTML. IDS.inner HTML. What do you mean by that? Means here As I said in the earlier, we are not writing any content for the paragraph tag. Instead, I'm taking the, or I'm specifying the content by making use of this inner element property. This property sets or returns the HTML content of an element. So it takes the format like this, that is HTML element object dot inner HTML is equal to text. The text is replaced with a text growing keywords. Okay. Next is IDS dot set attribute of style, font size, FS in terms of pixel. The color is red. Then what do you mean by that? Set attribute means it is the HTML DOM method which adds the specified attribute to an element and gives it the specified value. If the specified value already exists, only the value is set or changed. Here I am using that plus symbol. What is the use of this plus symbol? Means in order to concatenate the strings in JavaScript, we can make use of this plus operator. And again, I am setting the color is what? Red. In the question itself, they specified the color should be in red color. Next is again the font size at every time it should be incremented by 5. So I am taking it as fs plus is equal to 5. That is incremented at every time by 5. Next is I'm checking one condition, that is here I'm making some decisions, that is whether the font size is greater than or is equal to 0. If this is the case, the font size should be greater than, if this is greater than or equal to 50 means then the condition is true, then I will going to call the function clear interval. Here the text will going to grow, that is the size of the text will be increased up to some extent. That extent is the size of the font should be 50. Once it reaches means it will check for this condition. If this is true, I will going to clear that interval. Here the clear interval method clears a timer set with the set interval method. The ID value written by the set interval is used as the parameter for the clear interval method. Try to understand. Here, to be able to use the clear interval method, you must use a variable when creating the interval method. That is, set the timer by using that variable var1. Now I'm sending this variable to the clear interval function, so to clear the timer set with the set interval function. Again, I'm calling after clearing. Next, I need to set the timer in order to decrement or in order to shrink the text by setting set interval of dtimer comma 100. Here I'm calling the function dtimer comma 1000. Once I call this function dtimer means it start decrementing the size of the text, that is text gets shrinked. Here, as I said in the earlier, if it reaches to up to the font size is 50, then we are calling the function clear interval with a variable var1. Then again we are setting that variable. As I said in the earlier, if the font size reaches up to 50, then we are calling the function clear interval with the variable 1. This is the parameter where we used already in the set interval method. Next, after clearing that, again we are setting in order to decrement the time of the variable. Next is calling the function dtimer. Here it decrement the time what we are set. Here initially that is the font size, it will be get decremented by every, that is a 5, fs minus equals 5, that is fs is equal to fs minus 5. After that we are again taking the that is a element value by using that inner HTML attribute. Again we are setting some content to HTML text shrinking, then setting that attributes for that text shrinking, that is a font size should be like that, and the color of the font should be in blue color. The next thing is setting the attribute. The next thing is we are checking for the condition whether this fs equals 5. That is, here we are strictly checking that condition whether the font size once it reaches to 5. Remember, as I said in the earlier, the here we are using the equals. That's a 3 equals, which checks that whether that is strictly equal to 5. If this is the condition means then we are clearing that interval. Whatever the interval has been set, again we are clearing that interval with the variable 2. That is this method clears the whatever the time which we are set by using the set interval method. After that, closing all this tags, that is script body as well as the HTML. Once we execute this program means we are going to get the output like this. That is, the text growing is in red color as well as the text shrinking is in blue color. Let us continue with how to execute this third program. We already know that the procedures of executing this HTML document in the Windows operating system by using the notepad editor. Just open the notepad, then type the document. After typing that, save the program with the name 3.html. That is .html is the extension. After saving that, just open the document. Just look at that file using the browsers which are available on your system. Just I'm opening this document by making use of the browser called as the Google Chrome. Once you open this document means it will going to display the contents. Here in this program, we are not performing any interactions with that. Simply we are displaying the contents here. Just look at that, it is taking bit time, but look at that, it is displaying the content. Just look at that, the text growing color is in red color. Once it reaches the font size 50, it start shrinking and the color is in blue. This is what the actual things which we are performing in the third program. This is about the third program.